Africa, igama lam ndingu Siviwe Gwarube. Welcome to the Inside Track. Last week, the nation was rocked by bombshell allegations revealed at the ongoing Zondo Commission of inquiry into state capture. From a campaign to influence the media, to the bribery of judges, to election interference, and even the testing of Jacob Zuma's bed sheets for poison. You would be forgiven for thinking you had stepped into an episode of a twisted political thriller. But as they say, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Stay tuned as we unpack all the details and set out how South Africa's democracy can never be the same again. But first, we take a look at the week in headlines.
Now, South Africa has received 1 million doses. You're seeing it being offloaded on the aircraft right now. The next thing, of course, is getting them to actually go to the right people at the right time.
We believe that government needs to be honest in its reporting and its accounting on the vaccine rollout. To date, government has done none of these things.
Watching the evidence at the state capture inquiry about the State Security Agency, it has been nothing short of jaw-dropping.
Former President Jacob Zuma defying a constitutional court order this morning, saying he will not cooperate with the State Capture Commission. In a statement, Zuma says he's not afraid of being arrested, convicted or imprisoned.
Democratic Alliance councillor Banga has been re-elected mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality.
President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the easing of some restrictions. The alcohol ban has also been lifted and the curfew has been adjusted. Is this enough to help businesses recover?
SAPRA has said that it will allow controlled access of ivermectin for the treatment of COVID-19.
This week in the headlines, I would rather go to jail than testify in front of Zondo, said former President Jacob Zuma. Yet another COVID tender scandal hits Corruption Central, also known as Gauteng. And the first small consignment of our vaccines finally arrived in South Africa this week. But when will we see the rest? But first up, to some positive news out of Nelson Mandela Bay. Last week, the DA's Banga was re-elected as the mayor after repeated disruptions by the ANC and the EFF coalition of corruption. These shameful antics have deprived the residents of Nelson Mandela Bay of a stable government for over a year in the midst of a global pandemic. But congratulations, Mayor Banga. We know that your coalition of good governance will hit the ground running and you will continue the work of delivering services to all the residents of your city. This week, the DA's testimony before the Zondo Commission kicked off with our Chief Whip, Natasha Mazzoni, and our Shadow Minister of Correctional Services, James Self, giving an account to the Commission of the DA's efforts to expose and combat the large-scale capture of South Africa's state. These testimonies both revealed that throughout the Zuma years, every single member of the ANC in Parliament continued to shield Jacob Zuma from accountability, including the then Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa. The ANC needs to stop feigning shock and horror at the evidence that is coming to light at the Commission. We all know that you have been complicit in state capture every single step of the way. Corruption is not a victimless crime, and the DA will not rest until justice is served. This week, we saw the arrival of the first 1 million doses of the vaccine, enough for less than half of all healthcare workers in South Africa. We hope that it gets to our frontline workers as soon as possible. Despite this feeling like good news, the reality is that what has arrived is only enough for less than 1% of our population. We also understand now that the bulk of the vaccines are actually only arriving in 2022. There is still no hard or fast plan or a timeline on the table for a vaccine rollout plan. Where is it coming from? When will it arrive? How will it be rolled out? And this is exactly why the DA approached the courts to compel government to urgently release the full details of its vaccine rollout plan. Last week, the Dear Gauteng leader Solim Simanga called on the Hawks to urgently investigate Gauteng Premier David Makhura. Since the start of the national lockdown last year, Gauteng has been corruption central. Provincial scandals in this period include the 2.2 billion rand that was spent on dodgy PPE tenders and at times spending 5,000 rand on a single mask. 5,000 rand on a mask, on a single mask. And more recently, paying a staggering 431 million rand to sanitize schools. Makhura himself has personally been implicated in PPE scandals with evidence that he provided names of companies personally connected to him to get tenders in the province. Now, let's be honest. In any other country, a premier who callously presided over the death of people, like we saw in Life Esidimeni, and was subsequently implicated in the theft of billions of public money, would no longer be the premier right now. But we know, like every other ANC cadre who has come before him, who will come after him, he will simply walk away with zero consequences. This week, President Ramaphosa announced the final final level 3.1, level 3.2 lockdown regulations. We note the lifting of the nonsensical beach ban and the easing of curfew and alcohol restrictions. But it has come too late. Too late to save thousands of jobs in the restaurant, tourism and alcohol industries, which in the face of little government support have been left in ruins. We know that there are thousands of families that don't know how they will pay rent this month or put food on the table. This is why this madness must come to an end. South Africa cannot afford another lockdown in any shape or form, and this is exactly why the vaccine is such an important intervention. Last week, the Constitutional Court ruled that former President Jacob Zuma must appear before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. But he essentially gave the country the middle finger by simply saying that after all of his delaying tactics, he would rather be arrested, hear this, prosecuted and jailed than testify before the commission. Now, it is very dangerous territory when a former president disregards the ruling of the highest court in the land. I mean, does the man consider himself simply as the Prime Minister of Nkandla, smoking cigars in his government-sponsored Rondaville and nothing more? And if the statement that Zuma released on Monday morning is anything to go by, it boggles the mind why he has not been arrested before he flees the country just like his mates did, the Guptas. Which only leaves me with one question. What are you waiting for, NPA? And finally, on Monday night, I almost choked on my glass of Oros when I heard the president say that Cabinet had nominated the Cuban Medical Brigade for a Nobel Peace Prize for the year. This group of medical doctors was paid for by you and I, and they came with a price tag of 240 million rand for their year. This was hardly a charitable cause. But more importantly, it's deeply insulting that our cabinet, our own cabinet, couldn't think of our own healthcare workers who fought and at times died on the front lines of this pandemic. They did so selflessly under almost impossible conditions. And now they have to witness the president give kudos to his political homies, ignoring their sacrifices. I just want to say that we right here, right now, honor each and every single one of you. We extend our deepest gratitude for everything that you have done and that you continue to do for our nation. You are truly our heroes. Now, moving on to our spotlight this week, bombshell allegations revealed at the Zondo Commission should all make us sit up and take notice. Let's take a look at this story in the spotlight.
state security agency money was used to fund factional political activity in the ANC.
The Commission has heard shocking revelations about the agency in the past 2 days. It's been revealed that for years the agency was being used for political and private interests.
The real question here is, how has this impacted the human rights of ordinary South Africans who've been spied upon, who've been lied to, who've had money stolen that should have been spent on basic public services?
We're talking about 9 billion rand that has been spent that is unaccounted for.
Apart from the money, 3 ministers have also been fingered for actively aiding the collapse of the organisation during former President Jacob Zuma's years.
It's absolutely remarkable the extent of unaccountability that was taking place at the State Security Agency.
This is what Judge Raymond Zondo said. That is a lot of money. I quote him again. How could a government department not be able to account for 9 billion rand? He goes on to say, with 9 billion, imagine what you could do for people. And that is the tragedy of the entire thing.
We would like to apologize for that technical difficulty, but let's get right into it. Let's start with a look at what these bombshell allegations of the Zondo Commission said. South Africa, prepare yourself. This is as serious as it gets. First up, the so-called Project Justice. It involved the recruitment of sources within the judiciary to secure Zuma favorable outcomes in cases against him in court. The infiltration and manipulation of the media through Iqbal Survey's African news agency, which claimed to have received over 20 million rand for services rendered for 8 months. The 1.5 million rand per month allegedly spent on toxicologists to test Jacob Zuma's bed for poison. Then there was Project Commitment, which allegedly saw an estimated 80 million rand funneled to Zuma from the State Security Agency through Minister David Mahlobo. Project Tin Roof reportedly cost around 5 million rand to provide housing for Zuma's estranged wife, Manduli, and their children, with a further 800,000 rand spent monthly. Project Academia, which was designed to intervene in the Fees Must Fall protests and influence the direction of the student movement. It's not enough. Project Wave sought to protect Zuma's reputation locally and internationally. And most shockingly, the State Security Agency set up Operation Lock to provide safe houses and protection for apartheid's death squad commander Eugene de Kock after his release on parole in 2015. De Kock received between 100,000 and 200,000 rand a month to lease safe houses, pay living expenses, and a 40,000 rand salary. And state resources were used to advance the ANC's political campaigns in previous elections, especially to destabilize the DA-led Western Cape and to strengthen the ANC faction of the party in the province. Ultimately, 9 billion rand of public money has gone unaccounted for over the years. What is deeply concerning and should worry us all is that President Ramaphosa was privy to Dr. Sidney Mafumadi's report, which he testified on at the Commission since 2018. He instituted no remedial action. He held no one accountable. We must disabuse ourselves of the notion that there's a good ANC within a bad ANC. The reality is that every single person in that organization is implicated in this mess, which will now no doubt culminate in a constitutional crisis if Mr. Zuma continues to ignore court orders. But joining me today to unpack these bombshell allegations, I've got in studio DA leader John Steenhuisen. Hello, John.
Hi, Siv. Great to be with you on the Inside Track.
Welcome back. And we've got the DA Shadow Minister of Justice, Glynnis Breytenbach. Hello, Glynnis.
Hi, nice to be here.
And we've got the DA leader in the Western Cape, Bonginkosi Madikizela. Hello.
Hi, SG.
Welcome. I want us to get started as soon as possible. We are also joined today by Richard Newton, who is a DA staff member at the moment, but is a former specialist correspondent who used to work for the SABC in the Free State. And we'll chat to Richard in a moment. But John, I want to just get started. South Africans must be shell-shocked, or they simply are in a state of shock where they don't understand what's happening. why is this such an important, why are these revelations important? And why is this significant at this point in time? Because we've become desensitized to corruption.
Yeah, I think that, we've had so much corruption allegations coming out, so many revelations, that you get a sort of corruption fatigue in the country. But this has got a very sinister aspect to it, which goes beyond just, a brown envelope here or a state tender here or an ESCOM position there. This is actually a parallel state within a state that's been set up by a state security agency that long ago forgot about the national safety of the country and focused on its resources of the country and the resources of the agency on protecting a faction within the governing party. And that's what's behind all of this. It is the ultimate form of capture. You have a state security agency focusing on protecting, advancing the interests through the most nefarious and disgusting and disingenuous means, the interests of a single faction within the ANC. This should worry all of us as South Africans. The dirty tricks campaigns, the destabilization of the opposition, the bribing of the judiciary and journalists. Who knows what we've been reading over the past 5 to 10 years, whether that's factual or not, because this all comes into question. And the sooner the names of those judges and the sooner the names of those journalists and the publications are brought to light, the sooner we can start to really get to the bottom of what's going on.
Yeah. Glynnis, I want to bring you in here, because obviously you used to work for the NPA and you've been on this case for many years, even before your time at the Democratic Alliance as the Shadow Minister. I mean, do you want to just give us context on where this comes from, this case against Jacob Zuma, and where we are now?
Well, Jacob Zuma has obviously always been deeply uncomfortable living within a democratic state. And he's never considered himself to be subject to the rule of law. So he's always lived outside of those rules. So they were always for other people and not for him. And he's demonstrated that even before he became the president. The fact that he became the president already should raise a question. As the president, as John has just explained, he set up a parallel state to protect himself and his cronies. But one cannot forget that this was done with full knowledge of everybody else. It could not have been hidden. It's not something that happened without the knowledge of other members of the ANC. They certainly knew. And then he's used those state resources, your money, my money, everybody else's money, to employ a Stalingrad approach to not be held accountable for anything, criminally or otherwise. Never accountable. It's always somebody else's fault. He's always the victim of some sort of conspiracy. He's never accountable. He's never done anything wrong. And again now, he's doing that. He's done it with the arms deal matter, and we've seen how long it's taken for that to get to court. 99% because of his stalling tactics. The fact that he's now thumbing his nose at the Zondo Commission, who he appointed. He set up the commission. He appointed Justice Zondo. It's a creature of his own making. He's now decided that, again, he's better than the commission. So he's refusing to appear, and it is what it is. There's no real need now to get excited, simply because the law must take its course. And this is a constitutional democracy. It's so because South Africans have made it so. We decided, all South Africans decided, we wanted to live in a constitutional democracy where the constitution is the supreme law of the country and we subject ourselves to it, and that's what makes the social order work. Zuma is special.
But so just before you go on to the next one, I think the other important point to make, Glynnis, is this is a man who stands on every possible public platform demanding his day in court, and as soon as the day in court approaches, he does everything to prevent it from happening.
No, certainly. He's like demanding his day in court, demanding that his name be cleared. There isn't enough court days left in life to clear his name.
But Glynnis, I want to get in here on the issue around. Some of the most concerning things that we saw coming out of the commission is the allegations and members of the judiciary. They, as you say, the constitution is our last refuge. So, where does that place us? Should we be concerned?
The constitution hasn't failed us up to now. We've been in desperate times before, and the constitution is what saved us. The application of the constitution by the courts is what has saved us. They've stood firm. They've never let us down before. There's no reason to believe they're going to now. If he doesn't appear before Zondo, he must be arrested, prosecuted, and the law must take its course.
And perhaps finally we can see him go to jail.
Well, one can only live in hope.
Yeah.
But allegations about projects to influence or infiltrate the judiciary, those are allegations, and one should be careful to not make more of it than that. If there are members of the judiciary or other persons involved with the judiciary that have succumbed to this temptation, then of course they must be identified and exposed. It's important.
Yeah.
But at the moment there's no evidence of any single person in the judiciary who has been bribed.
Okay.
And so, before we jump up and down about it, we should be sure that it is in fact so.
Okay. Right, John, I want to now come to the issue around President Ramaphosa at the time was the deputy president, and he had sight of the report that actually Dr. Sidney Mafumadi was testifying on. I mean, should we hold him accountable for
Absolutely,
this thing?
without a doubt. And I think there's a number of important points. First of all, President Ramaphosa was, for many years, the chairperson of the ANC's Cadre Deployment Committee, and had been responsible for a lot of the people that have gone on to serve on SOE boards. The Shladi Motsunengs, the Brian Molefes, the Machele Kokos, all would have gone through that deployment committee upon which President Ramaphosa sits. So it's not good enough for him to sit back and say, I'm shocked. He's got to step up to the plate and take some accountability, which is why we're saying he needs to go to the Zondo Commission. Also because he was as close to Zuma over those years. He was deputy president. It was like Rolls and Royce, Mills and Boone, Casey and Jojo. They were joined at the hip. They were working together to achieve these things. So I think it is disingenuous in the extreme for President Ramaphosa to now pretend he was some, purer than the driven snow balloon that floated above all this muck and dirt that's starting to emerge. He was deeply embedded in it. And as the leader of that organization now, he has a duty to account for not only his role, but the role that his party has played in plunging our country into the crisis.
And don't forget, John, that he was also given the responsibility to come up with a turnaround strategy for those SOEs.
Exactly.
Which he hasn't done as leader of government business. Bongi, actually I want to come to you because, one of the revelations that also came out of the commission was that there was meddling in trying to destabilize the DA-led Western Cape. I mean, the intimidation of opposition parties. Is that where we headed?
Look, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the sequence of events, and the onslaught that the Democratic Alliance, suffered in the Western Cape, I hear what my friend is saying here, but I'm thinking back in the days of Nathan Rasmus' commission, against Helen when she was still the mayor. The ANC really never accepted losing the city of Cape Town. And when that onslaught from the provincial government of the ANC and that commission, which was led by Judge Erasmus, it became clear that there was something sinister there. But when we won the provincial government in 2009, again, the ANC was taken by surprise. And 2 years after that, when we were preparing for the local government elections, you heard that Zuma had a meeting with the notorious gangs to influence the outcome of 2011 elections.
Mark Liffman, if I believe correctly. Dreadful
people like
characters
Big
like
Marinas, the known gangs. But when they lost the local government elections in 2011, they went a step further. 2 years after that, the so-called Seskona People's Movement was then started. You heard the testimony there at the Zondo Commission. This was part of the project that was funded, but by SSA. And what is very concerning for me, Siviwe, is the caliber of individuals, that are part of these organizations, because the people who started Seskona are people. One of them was actually fired as the city councillor, and yet the ANC had an audacity to allow that person to leave that so-called movement, which was started a year before general elections in 2014. And the number of so-called service protests, actions that we had in the Western Cape, towards 2014. So if you look at all this sequence of events, and what we had at that Zondo Commission, it became very clear that there's been a concerted effort to make sure that there's an attack on the democracy, particularly where the ANC is not in government.
Yeah, but Bongi, I mean, we can't let this go. I mean, if these allegations are true, I mean, this is now, as Glynnis was talking about, the fibre of our constitutional democracy. I mean, this would be a problem. I know you've instituted some kind of investigation. Do you want to talk to us about that?
No, absolutely. I mean, when those revelations were made at the Zondo Commission, I mean, I felt compelled as the leader of the DA in the Western Cape, of course, to make sure that we institute an investigation, because I think the public deserve to know what really happened. We've always suspected, as the leadership of the DA in the Western Cape, that there was something sinister here. There was a third hand, and this confirms that. But I think we need to get to the bottom of it so that we know who was behind it, so that the law can take its course. So we are really under siege. I mean, the democracy in South Africa is under attack, and I think South Africans must stand up and realize that if we don't work together, put political parties aside, if we don't work together to protect our democracy, irrespective of the color of the t-shirt or the cap that you wear, we are in serious trouble.
But here's the thing as well, Siviwe. I mean, Watergate brought down Richard Nixon. The info scandal brought down the then president of the Republic. Where are the consequences? Not one, and this is the thing that amazes me, not once, whether it's the arms deal, whether it's Life Esidimeni, whether it's this massive ball dropping on the vaccine requirements that are going to cost South Africans lives. Do you ever hear the ANC stepping up and saying, we're sorry, or we take responsibility and taking action? He's had this report since 2018. What has he done in the interim? He's made Arthur Fraser the Director General of Correctional Services, and he's made David Mashlobo, both of whom are heavily implicated in that Mufamadi Commission funding, a Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, with the full knowledge of what is in that report about both those individuals. This is not somebody who you can say is committed to clean, accountable government if he's putting these people and promoting them into senior positions in his own government. How different is he to Jacob Zuma?
But that's why when we say to South Africans that irrespective of who the leader is, ANC leaders will always put their comrades and their party before the country. And that should concern all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you speak about the Fraser, John, he was moved to a lateral transfer from SSA, where he's been heavily implicated in all of these wrongdoings. $9 million gone missing of taxpayers' money. And he was moved to Correctional Services, which has a massive budget. Massive. And it's in deep trouble. And it was supposed to be a temporary solution to a problem while this report and investigation was finalised and compiled. He's had it since 2018 and Fraser's still there. And he's not going anywhere far.
I'll tell you why. Because Arthur Fraser has abused the state security apparatus to get files on everybody. He's like the J. Edgar Hoover of South African politics. And I can tell you anything you like, he's got a file in Cyril Ramaphosa this thick. Because Bathabile Dlamini, she said many absurd things. But the one thing she said that was absolutely true is that everybody knows each other's small and yana skeletons. And that is why Arthur Fraser was not tried over the many times that criminal charges have been recommended against him. Never felt the heat because he's got files on everybody. And everyone's too terrified to go after him in case he releases a file. You've seen he's already gone on the offensive again this week with these perjury charges.
We'll have to see how that works out for him.
I want to bring in Richard here, who used to work for the SABC, the public broadcaster. Richard, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, sir. It's great to be here.
Speaking of small and yana skeletons, I mean, I know that in your time at the SABC, Richard, you also dealt with a number of skeletons, and you had many a run-in with the now Secretary General of the ANC, who was the then Premier of the Free State, Ace Magashule, and some of the hairy things that really came out of how journalism and the media was influenced. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, well, it was about 2011. I came back from Belgium, where I'd been the European correspondent and spent a year in London as a London correspondent. And I came back to the Free State, where Tlali Motsoeneng appointed me as the acting regional editor, as he moved up to Joburg, where he took over there. And I realized very quickly there was a culture of allowing the Premier himself and also some of his MECs to phone editors and journalists directly and instruct them as to what stories they should be doing the next day. On a number of occasions, Ace would call me at home and tell me what he thought we should be covering the following day. If I said we didn't have the capacity or we already assigned the teams to do something else, he would say, okay, no problem. And then about a minute later, my phone would ring and Claudia would say, Richard, I think we need to look at how we're structuring our coverage tomorrow.
Yeah.
And sadly, it got to the point where a lot of these assignment editors who would get these calls would then not even bother to wait for the call from Claudia. They would just assign a crew to go out. And it also got to a point where we realized that half the time we didn't even need to actually put a story together.
Yeah.
We just had to be seen to have been there when that particular person was doing the story.
Yeah.
And it was such a waste of resources, such a waste of money. There were so many examples of things we were sent to do. I was sent to do a story at the Tyrannus Church purely because a minister was expected to be there at the church for that particular sermon. And we spent 4 or 5 hours there and no one pitched. So there was a lot of this instructions coming through and working through Cloudy, even Phil Molefe, even Jimmy Matthews.
Yeah.
And I mean, this was a culture.
Now, I mean, Richard, this is the public broadcaster. This speaks to the issue that Bongi and the panels and John were talking about, that the infiltration and the contamination of our institutions in the country. This is a public broadcaster where there's now allegations that media and journalists were paid. Are you aware of some of these things, and what have you done to report some of them?
Well, let me just start off by saying there were also a lot of really committed, dedicated journalists and editors who sort of pushed back against this. Didn't often get very far, but they did push back against this. You'll remember the SABC 8 and that particular incident. But as far as cash changing hands, I don't have any indication of that. But I know that, for example, in 2013, 2014, 2015, the newsroom in the Free State, their year-end function was sponsored by ACE. He paid for the food, he paid for the drink, he paid the executive producer of Lesedi 10,000 Rand for a Christmas party for that team. And, some might say, oh, that's very generous, but it's not. It's buying support. And we had a lot of this type of gifting, if you like. There was a particular person who was regional editor for a while after I was, who went on all expenses paid to China with the Premier. Everything was covered. The SABC also gave him money for incidentals, given that he was going to report on what the Premier was doing. The first day there, his equipment broke, and he spent 2.5 weeks in China with the Premier without filing a single story, completely paid for by the Premier's office. So there was not necessarily cash changing hands, but there was certainly handed out.
Yeah, and I think you raise a very important point, Richard, that there are many dedicated people at the public broadcaster who've stayed the course and who've been there for many years and who've tried to push back against this culture. But it's shown that it's deeply insidious. And I just want to read a comment, John, from one of our viewers, Gavin Henderson, who says, it also shows an absolute lack of oversight and incompetence of Parliament, all of you in Parliament. I find it remarkable that this SSA issue is suddenly a shock. All members of Parliament failed in the Zuma years. I hold you all complicit. Now, Gavin is saying, all of you were in Parliament. Why did you not do anything about it?
Well, first of all, let's just say that that's not the case. In fact, if one goes back and looks at the Hansard, looks at the footage, the DA was fighting this every step of the way. Right back to when they tried to put Cecil Burgess in as the effective Inspector General of Intelligence. We fought that. We were able to stop it from happening. Our work on the JSCI through Dirk Stubber and our members on the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence were what pressured government and the Inspector General of Intelligence to do the original PAN project, which was the genesis of all of this investigations. It would never have happened if the DA wasn't there. And the revelations of the PAN project leaked out in Jacques Pauw's now famous book, The President's Keepers.
Yeah.
Don't be mistaken that the DA was not doing anything. We absolutely were, within the constraints of the system. And I want to talk about that a bit later. Where there was complicitness with Parliament, where the problem lies, is with the presiding officers. Because every single time you put a tough question to a minister, the Speaker or the Deputy Speaker will rule you out of order. And you can trace the genesis of every major crisis in our country, whether it was the SABC debacle, SASSA, the arms deal, to the presiding officers in Parliament shutting down. Even as you would know very well, with the latest scandal around the COVID-19 handling. The Deputy Speaker's comments were well, Parliament mustn't get in the way of the executive. This is a deputy speaker of the institution that should be holding somebody the government accountable, saying we mustn't get in their way. And this is it. This Parliament's had its teeth pulled so much that it is an uphill battle for DA MPs. Also the way the committees are structured. You know, in other countries, committees are generally fairly balanced, and opposition chairs, so you'll have Labour Party and Conservative Party chairpersons of committees because they find the best chairperson for that committee. In South Africa, in our parliamentary system, the committees are weighted, and the ANC manipulate the formula after every election, because they've lost votes in every election, to make sure that they manufacture a majority. In this last election, where they did so badly and lost so many seats, they even put committees together to make sure that they could keep a majority there. And you try and do something, it's raised. James Self has been on the Bosasa case for over a decade. Now everyone's excited about Bosasa because it's come out. Go back and have a look. In the committee records, in the PMG minutes, there was James Self waging on often a lone battle. Natasha Mazzoni in Public Enterprises waging a lone battle against these vultures at the state-owned entities, and us going after. I laid criminal charges against Arthur Fraser 2 years ago. Not one thing has been done about that by the SAPS. Not one thing. So the DA has been at the forefront of this. What we need, however, is to get more people behind us, more votes in the box, because I want to come back to Bongi's point. There's no good ANC. We must disabuse ourselves of that fact. Ramaphosa, as we've seen, is following the exact playbook, putting his own people into positions, keeping rotten people like Zwane, Mashlobo, all of those people in there. He gets a report from his intelligence chief about what's going on, who then, clearly under his instruction, went to the Zondo Commission to try and prevent Jafta from testifying. There's no good ANC. We've got to vote this lot out. We've got to bring them below 50% so that we can bring change. Waiting for the ANC to reform itself, to self-correct, you're going to wait till kingdom come. It's not going to happen. The only way is to shock them is through bringing them below 50%. And my goodness me, if these latest revelations aren't enough for citizens at home to sit up and say, this is a rotten government that's stolen money from me, that's robbed my children's future, that is only interested in fattening their own wallets and the wallets of their own relatives, that has put everyone's lives in peril through their bungling on the vaccine, and that's not enough to vote them out, then I don't know what is.
You know, Siviwe, I cannot get over the image of mainly Zimbabweans who are crossing the border during this festive season at the height of the pandemic in South Africa, because the erosion of democracy in the country, didn't just suddenly happen. It started like this. And people were prepared to come to a country that has the highest number of active cases because they are fighting. It's survival. So this is where we are heading in South Africa, and I couldn't agree more with the point that John is making. And really, South Africans must understand that if we don't stop this rot now, I mean, Zimbabwean situation will be like a walk in the park.
But okay, I want to now. I mean, if I'm watching this at home and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, well, this is all very doom and gloom. I mean, where to from now? I mean, Bongi, we've got the local government elections coming up in next year, this year actually, and people are worried. I mean, is the election going to be stolen? Can we trust our judges? I mean, what can we do? What can people at home do? And what can you inspire them to do? Actually, what's your call to action? What are we going to do to ensure that we get a free and fair election?
Look, I think that for a very long time, the ruling party nationally has been using history to influence people to vote in a particular way. And I think people must realize that before they take a decision to vote next time, they must look at the current situation and ask themselves a very important question. What is the future of South Africa is going to be under this current government? And the second thing that people must really do is that must really compare governments. I mean, there are two governing parties in South Africa currently, parties in South Africa currently. I mean, the Democratic Alliance is not perfect. We have many challenges in the Western Cape. But for God's sake, you cannot compare our provincial government with the national government. With all our faults, Siviwe.
In every single indicator.
In every single indicator.
Governance reports.
And reports that are coming from independent institutions. You know, we're not blowing our own horn. Just compare the two and really make a sound decision so that we don't get to a point where the situation that is happening in Zimbabwe, in Uganda, I mean, there were elections recently in Uganda. I mean, this is where we are heading. So we are saying to South Africans, let's compare the two governing parties in South Africa and make a wise choice come 2021 local government elections.
Glynnis, I mean, you know, are we ever going to see justice served? Should we still trust our institutions?
Absolutely, we've got no reason not to. Justice will be served. The NPA is hopefully on the mend, very, very slowly, much slower than hoped, but nevertheless, hopefully on the mend. Needs to be huge restructuring in the police because the NPA is only as good as the police. But our constitution is a good one. It's a strong constitution. It's always protected us. There's no reason to believe it's not going to protect us now. And the judiciary has never let us down. So I think in the long run we're in safe hands. But as Bongi says, this is a slippery slope. And if we don't stop it, you know, eventually you go so far you can't come back.
And the only way to stop the erosion of our institutions is if you strengthen parties that are looking after them. And so, John, I mean, you know, all of this is coming to a head. I know you called for the president to go and account at the commission. And what are some of the questions that you want him to really answer?
Well, what we want to do is to get him to answer for his role in the Cater Deployment Committee. We want him to answer why he has continued to protect those who he knows, because he would have observed it firsthand in cabinet meetings who were involved in the wrongdoing. He has to account. We've applied to ask the Zondo Commission to put these very important questions to him and ask him why, if he can see through the State Capture Commission what a devastation their cater deployment policy has caused for the economy, the suffering it's caused for people, then why is he continuing with it? Why did the Secretary General less than 6 months ago send out another letter demanding that all vacancies in government for CEOs, board members, state-owned enterprises, DGs, have to come through the deployment committee of the ANC? It's continuing. You know, they say madness is repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, with the ANC, you're going to just see the repetition of them because they know no different. So back to Bongi's point, which I think is the key one, and the question you asked. What can citizens do? And I think it goes a step deeper than just voting. Go to our website, www.da.org.za. Because what frustrates me is this trope that does the rounds by the chattering class and some of the commentators, that all the DA does is moan. They never put on the table solutions. Go to the DA website. There's a comprehensive solution for every one of the major problems. There is a plan there to lift South Africa into a modern, progressive, exciting country that's moving forward. And the policies to do it are all set out very, very clearly there. I challenge those watching today. If you really want to see a change in South Africa, if you want to build that new future that we know is possible if we do the right things, join your local DA branch. Get involved on the front lines of this battle to build an inclusive, growing South Africa. If you don't have the time to get involved in the branch, make a donation. But for goodness sake, it's 5 minutes to midnight in South Africa, and as citizens now, we've all got to get our hands dirty to rescue our country and to build that new future we all know is possible if we make the right choices.
Absolutely.
And more importantly, John, the obsession about race in South Africa, I mean, is what is going to be the last nail of our coffin. We know our history. We know where we come from. But this is the only party in South Africa that really wants to acknowledge where we come from, but wants to bring together South Africans who share the common goal and common vision. And we need to make sure that we look at what the government is doing for me rather than doing the color of the person who's leading that government. And I think this is the message that South Africans need to understand, because the emotional blackmail about race and where we come from hasn't had any African country in our continent. In fact, the sad reality, Siviwe, is that black people are poorest where government is exclusively black. That's the reality. And people must just understand that.
Yeah. Look, this is very, very, very interesting, and thank you very much for all three of you for joining me. And thank you, Bongi. Thank you for coming through, and thank you, Glynnis, and thank you, John. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for. I wish we had more time, and we'll be right back. This week in DA-led towns and cities across the country, the city of Cape Town has budgeted over 2.1 billion rand to cushion residents from the impact of COVID-19. We also saw the deployment of 500 additional local learner law enforcement officers, who will soon be making the Western Cape safer. And we saw the DA-led Kucha municipality in the Eastern Cape has made great progress in its 8 million rand annual road sealing and repairs. However, onto this exciting week's DA at Work feature, I am joined today by the Mayor of Stellenbosch, Gesi van Deventer. Van Deventer, yes, Gesi van Deventer. And I'm also joined by the Shadow Minister of Mineral Resources in the DA Energy and Mineral Resources, Kevin Milam. And we've got John here still in the studio with us. Gesi, Mayor, I just want to get started very quickly. I know that the Stellenbosch municipality is now set to take steps to basically disabuse themselves of this relationship with Eskom. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yes. Good morning to everybody. We know by now how devastating load shedding and blackout is to our economy, and even more so in Stellenbosch. And we as a DA-led government had an easy choice. Sit back, accept that, criticize Eskom, or get out of our box and fix it. We decided to make a change. So over the last couple of months, and I would like to thank Kevin for assisting us, we've done a lot of research and background work. And last week, we were fortunate enough to take it to council, and we got the green light to proceed. So now the hard work starts, and we are very determined to make that happen. Indeed, next week already, we'll sign an MOU, an MOA with our partners. We have involved Stellenbosch University, a wonderful partner, the CSIR, also provincial government is assisting us, Kevin assisting us. So we've got strong people on board.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but now let's get down to the practical implications of that.
Yes.
It's wonderful to see the media, it's great, but what now?
Yes.
People are saying, are you going to switch on the lights tomorrow or not?
Yes.
Not so easy, but we are going there. So we have decided to not make use of one big power plant or generator. That will simply be too cost effective and take too long. We all understand the procurement processes, it's a very long road. So instead we chose to do a combination of small opportunities. So next week, once the MOU is signed, we'll sit down with our partners and then discover what is ready to be done. We'll determine the cost, the opportunities, viability, sustainability, and then act upon that. And what are we talking about? We don't want one big plant, but rather a small phased-in approach, which is very practical, budget-wise, because no one, I think, can afford to build a power plant. That will just be too expensive. So what are we looking at? What opportunities? It could include rooftop solar panels, methane mining, a very interesting one, because it's very toxic gases from landfill sites, which could be converted to electricity. We look at buying electricity from our residents. We have the bio in place already, so that's fantastic to do that. Buy from independent producers, but also we can go further and investigate wind farms, solar farms, and whatever comes to mind.
Yeah.
So innovation makes it very easy. It's practical, it's affordable, and yes, we can do it.
Yeah. Kevin, I mean, speaking about IPPs, the mayor talks about IPPs and one of the strategies that Stellenbosch wants to use. I know that you've been fighting at the front lines in Parliament to essentially allow South Africa to be able to procure power directly from IPPs. Do you want to tell us about that fight in Parliament?
Sure. So there's two elements to that. The first is what Mayor van Deventer has been talking about, and that is allowing municipalities to purchase power directly from IPPs. And we've been lobbying for that for a long time. Fortunately, we managed to get or put enough pressure on Minister Mantashe that the Electricity Regulation Act was amended. The schedule to the Electricity Regulation Act was amended in October last year, which now allows municipalities that have the capacity, the technical skills, and the financial resources, they're in good financial standing to do exactly that. And so that's why Stellenbosch is taking this important step right now. And our other DA-led municipalities are looking at similar things. So, for example, George municipality this week announced that they are looking at wheeling deals. Stellenbosch already has a bylaw in place. George are now looking to put a similar bylaw in place to allow municipality where electricity where there is an oversupply to be transferred to areas where there is an undersupply. Kocha municipality, we spoke about some of the work they're doing in the Eastern Cape. It's a little bit more difficult in that area because they're under an ANC government at provincial level.
Yeah.
But they have wind farms already established in the municipality. So this would be allowing them to take electricity directly from those wind farms and supplement the supply they get from Eskom. So that's the kind of thing we're doing.
Yeah. And Kwesi, I want to come back to you a little bit about what does it mean for a local municipality if you're able to keep your lights on? What does it mean for job creation, investment in the municipality, and just the residents of Stellenbosch?
Look, we know that Stellenbosch and Franschhoek, of course, which is part of us, has a huge tourism industry. And we've been really hard hit by this. So what can we do? We have no choice. As a caring government, we have to do that.
Absolutely.
We know by now that medium and small business create most of the jobs, but also we know, sadly, they cannot afford to run their own generators. The cost is just astronomical. You know, it's about 7 times as much as conventional energy. So we must sit back and do what we have to do. Provide that conducive environment and allow business to do what they do best. Make money, create jobs. My heart bleeds when you go into the townships and see the small businesses, the spaza shops. They really fall apart. It is really so sad to see. So if you want to assist our people, we must do that. But an interesting other one is that, of course, investing from different other parts of the world. Since last week, Wednesday, I've been inundated with very interesting proposals.
Are you serious?
Locally, nationally, internationally. Even this morning, sitting here, somebody phoned me to say, can they partake? And people say to me, it's a pipe dream. It's not a pipe dream. I think we have to realize that we have a sustainable municipality, thanks to good DA government for a couple of years now. We are sustainable. We also have a lot of bright minds in and around Stellenbosch, in administration as well as university. But most importantly, now let's look at Zondo. We have a political will, and we will do that. We're determined to see it through and make it happen for our people.
Yeah, I mean, John, you're hearing this where it's. People are shocked in that they can't imagine a reality outside of not having sustainable power supply from their government. I mean, this is exciting stuff.
Ja, ek moet begin om te sê ek is vreeslik trots as die leier van hierdie party om te sien die goeie werk wat ons DA regerings doen rondom die land om die duidelike verskil vir mense te wys tussen 'n ANC regering en 'n DA regering. En dis baie duidelik nou want jy het nou munisipaliteite met 'n DA regering wat sorg vir mense, wat gee om vir die mense en steel nie die geld wat vir die mense nodig het. So Gessie, ek wou begin om te sê baie dankie. It's very exciting to be a leader of a party that is on the cutting edge of this innovation, and I'm so proud to be able to go around the country because a lot of people say, well, all the DA does is criticize, as we said in the earlier. Well, here we actually are leading the way in making sure that our citizens are no longer victims of the incapable state. That they have a government that cares about creating jobs, growing an economy, building a modern, progressive town or city, and are setting out to do it. Not just talking about it, they're doing it. So whether it's what Gwarube is doing there, what George is doing, the innovations in the city of Cape Town, or the work that Alan Windy and his team are doing, it is light years ahead of anything. And what really frustrates me is how so many journalists and commentators try to create this moral equivalence between what the DA gets wrong and what the ANC get wrong. Nothing could be further. You compare any DA government, whether it's Midvaal, Stellenbosch, any one of the 30-odd municipalities run in the Western Cape, our province, Nelson Mandela Bay, Kruger, it is as clear as daylight, the difference between the lived experience of people in those towns. Life gets better where the DA governs.
Kevin, this will allow you, what Gwarube and her team are doing is phenomenal, and John is absolutely right. So this will allow you in your work in Parliament to be able to juxtapose that with, what is being done in DA municipality with what could be possible for South Africa.
Absolutely. So it's unbelievable the difference, as John has indicated, between what the DA does and what the ANC says it's going to do. But we've got to keep the pressure on. We've got to show that this is beneficial not just to DA municipalities but to all municipalities. I get messages on a daily basis from citizens in eThekwini, eKuruleni, Tshwane, and smaller municipalities the length and breadth of South Africa saying, why isn't the DA doing this in our municipality? Well, to do that, we've got to get out there and be elected as the leaders of those municipalities. We've got to run those municipalities, and then we can make the changes that we're making in DA municipalities. But rest assured, we are working to try and make the ANC do it as well.
Yeah. Well,
Mag ek nog 'n kommentaar hê sommer na Afrikaans?
Ja, please.
Ek wou net sê as die DA nasionale regering was, het ons nie so Eskom gehad nie. Dit sou gewerk het. Maar Stellenbosch kan 'n mini-laboratorium wees om vir die res van die land te wys wat sou gebeur as die DA in beheer is nasionaal. So ons is baie trots daarop en baie bly vir die ondersteuning van ons leiers.
Yeah, no, we're very, very proud of you for all the work that you're doing there. Keep going, and I hope really that you can start to improve the lives of the people in that municipality with all of this innovation. So thank you very much. This is all that we have time for. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for
Thanks, sir.
all the work that you're doing, and thank you very much, Gwarube, and good luck. This is really, really exciting work. John, I want to just quickly, before we wrap up, I want to ask you, we've got next week your real State of the Nation address coming up. What can people expect? It's on Monday. It's going to be live on all our DA platforms. What can people expect to hear from you?
Well, I think what people are going to hear from me is honesty. I think, what part of the job of an opposition is to set out very clearly where the country is, and then to set out a way to get us from where we are to a better future. So we'll be doing an honest, frank assessment of that. It's going to focus on reforms. It's going to focus on vaccines, getting us out from under this rock of COVID lockdowns. And it's going to be talking about innovation. We've got our Innovation Summit coming up on Thursday, which a day set aside by the DA to talk about innovations in government. And I'm excited about that. And I hope to share some of those success stories and to give President Ramaphosa a plan to make South Africa work again, to get South Africa working, and most importantly, to get South Africans back to work. I'm very excited about that alternative offer. I don't want to give too much away. I want to make sure the viewers are tuned in to listen very carefully next week. But do listen in. It's going to be an exciting prospectus for hope and change.
That's going to be on Monday at 10 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen. Please do tune in. And before we wrap up, I just want to remind you that you've got until the 15th of February to object to government's proposal to make you pay your TV license in order for you to be able to utilize your streaming services. And so we've got all of those details right at the bottom of the screen. Follow the link and make your voice heard. And thank you very much for joining us. Mzansi Afrika. As the official opposition in South Africa, we have a moral and constitutional obligation to hold national government to account and to call out corruption anywhere it rears its head. Critics can say what they like about the DA being overly critical of national government, but that is the job. It is exactly what we were elected to do, to perform checks and balances on government. So we will not stop, not ever, until every cent of your money is accounted for and money that is meant for the people is truly spent on the people. If you want to hear more about what the DA is doing to continue to fight for you, then tune in on Facebook or YouTube this Monday at 10 a.m. to watch DA leader John Steenhuisen deliver his true State of the Nation address. Until next week, keep it tight, Mzansi.